Checking. Testing. Yeah, okay. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Baker Jr. I am the therapist, the president of Avenues Unlimited Counseling Center, streaming live from the office during the COVID pandemic. And today, this is our first stream. I'm hoping that if people find these interesting or useful, that you guys let me know, and we'll have a lot of other presentations and things that I could talk about. But today we're going to be talking about emotional literacy, about our feelings. Why do we have them? What are they there for? What do we do with them? I hope to have some of those questions answered for you here as we go through my presentation. Today I'll be using a PowerPoint. I know it's not as personal as like talking one-on-one or interacting with people, but this being my first stream, I kind of want to just do this as an experiment, and maybe next time it'll be more interactive. We'll see how this evolves. So without further ado, let's talk about emotions. So here we have emotional literacy. So my first question is, why do we have feelings? When I ask this question, I get a lot of different answers. Usually it's something along the line, so we have feelings, or so we can communicate something. And a lot of people kind of answer that in a way that, when you really think about it, like, okay, well, what am I really asking? Why do we have feelings? And what I'm wanting to get at with this question is, what purpose do feelings serve? Have you ever considered that? Like, why might you have feelings? Like, we know we have teeth to chew up food, or the opposable thumb to hold things and make tools and whatnot. But evolutionarily, what is the evolutionary or biological purpose of feelings? And so, to cut to that chase, I think feelings as, let's see, this is kind of in the way, there we go. So feelings kind of tell us about what's going on in the environment without us having any history of or experience with former to what's happening in front of us. So, in essence, feelings are a type of data. They're a type of wisdom telling us about what's going on right now in the world or what's in the environment around us without having ever experienced it before necessarily. So for example, here I have a man, I guess a hunter-gatherer era type human here. He's being confronted with a saber-toothed tiger. Without feelings, if he hadn't seen that, if he had no emotional reaction to that tiger, he might just be curious about, hey, what's he going to do next? Or, what, I wonder, what its fur feels like, or something like that. But without ever having to have a name for this thing, like maybe he's never even seen one, he's able to identify, just like most of us would, okay, that thing's a threat. Our brain puts together all these cues or all these parts from the environment and puts together a big picture of, oh, that thing might eat me, or that thing could be a potential harm to me. And so how does it do that? Well, it does it through the emotion of fear. So fear, we'll talk about a little more later, is there to tell us that there's a threat of some loss. And so in this case, this man might lose his life, or if he's hunting something, maybe the saber-toothed tiger, eats what he's going after or something like that, but it definitely is a threat without ever having to have experienced a loss from this thing. Move this back down. Let's see. So I want to go into, first of all, some facts about feelings and kind of address some myths that we have. So first and foremost, feelings are not good or bad. There are no good or bad feelings. I know, and you might even catch me saying good feeling, bad feeling from time to time. It's just part of our culture or vocabulary. But again, I want to look at feelings as just data. It's just telling you something about what's going on. There is no good 1 or 0 in like a computer, right? A computer doesn't look at that 1 or 0 in the binary system as a good 1, a bad 0. It's just data. So I think we often, and maybe another way to look at them is euphoric versus dysphoric types of emotions. Euphoric, what we associate with like happy feelings. Dysphoric are non-happy feelings, essentially. And just because you have a feeling doesn't mean that you are bad because you feel a particular way or you feel differently about something than someone else does. Again, that's just your data, your interpretation of what's happening. So again, we'll start with that idea of there are no good or bad feelings or positive or negative ones. They're just feelings, just data. Without feelings, we cannot make decisions about anything. There's this vignette or this story that you can look up, I believe it's on Radio Lab on NPR, where there's this engineer who I can say this because I used to be in engineering, but like most engineers, we kind of have this concept that if I just get rid of my feelings and look at things as logically as possible, I will be able to make the best decisions and solve just about anything. These feelings I have kind of get in the way. How great. Well, there's this engineer who, he unfortunately got a brain tumor in the area of his brain that would allow him to process and interpret emotions. And he was informed that after his, he had to have like a form of lobotomy where they removed part of his brain, that after this surgery that he would be, have trouble with his feelings. Like he might not be able to connect to them. And he thought, okay, cool. He talks about this in the interview. Like, I'll be like Mr. Spock on Star Trek. I'll be the most logical, rational guy at my office and make the best decisions. Well, he gets back after this procedure, and first thing he's got to do is make a decision on signing some standard documents. And sitting on his desk were 2 pens, a blue one and a black one. And he talks about how he, debated for hours in his head trying to use logic and deduction which is the best pen to use to sign something that used to take him just a few seconds. And so I think this illustrates something else about feelings. 1, we're always feeling something. And 2, feelings, maybe 3 things. They can be very subtle, so we might not even notice that it's a feeling at times. And 3, they help us make a decision. We're using our feelings all the time. Why did I decide to do that? Because it felt right. Does that make sense? The blue pen feels right to sign this paper with. Why not? So again, without feelings, we really can't make accurate or make decisions. Ultimately, it's going to come down to how we feel about something. Again, we're always feeling something. They may vary in intensity. A lot of times we don't consciously or might not even notice the more subtle of feelings until they are intense enough to get our attention. I've often had people come in, most of the time when someone comes in saying, Eric, I've got an anger issue. I go from 0 to 100 with my anger at the drop of a hat. And, when I talk with them and get to know them a little bit better and kind of track back like what's going on there emotionally, well, what I often find is this person was probably, they didn't go just from 0 to 100. They were probably operating at this 70, 80% of this intensity where they just weren't connecting to the feeling. And so when they learn to connect to that feeling at a more subtle level, they're able to act on that anger they were describing with less intensity and, before it becomes a huge blow-up kind of thing. So again, just the key thing to take away is that we are, again, always feeling something and they vary in intensity. We might not notice it until it really gets our attention. And everyone relates to that differently. Just, some people are thinkers, some people are doers, some people are feelers. And, feelers are just people that are more in tune with, I think, their more subtle emotions that they have. So, other facts about feelings, it's false that feelings are irrational. I don't believe that feelings are irrational. We might not get to the cognitive behavior side of things on this today. But at some point I'd like to, that might be the next podcast or stream or whatever we call these. But feelings are just, again, a form of data, and they are based on assessments of what's going on around us. But they don't necessarily mean that they're irrational. Feeling, in fact, it's quite the opposite. I think how I feel about something is probably the most solid thing I can say about my experience as a human being. You can't argue with me if I say I feel happy about something. You can't say, no, you don't. Well, you're not me. I have my feelings, you have yours. And so feelings are just that. They're not necessarily these irrational things. I think we might act irrationally or perceive things irrationally, but I think irrationality is a different issue than just feelings themselves being an irrational device or experience that we have. Feelings are felt in our body. So here we have a heat map. This was a study done, I don't know what university did this, but they had participants in this study, there's like several thousand, draw where they felt different feelings, and and how they felt them. And so I don't know if you can make it out with the resolution here, but this first one over here, anger. Most people talk about feeling anger in their chest, in their arms and hands, in their neck and jaw. I mean, it's like an angry face that you're making. Whereas fear, fear is kind of felt like right here in your chest, and it's sort of like things are kind of coming in. Let's see. I think this one is happy. Happy is that kind of warm, glowing feeling all over our body. Let's see, sadness is right here, sort of like this heaviness that we often feel, and so on. And you can see from here, like, I think this one's depression, so like, someone that's depressed is feeling a greater intensity of that feeling. This one's shame. I just want to point out, shame looks like Spider-Man. I can't unsee that. Personally, I think shame's a construct, not necessarily an emotion. Supervisees of mine in the past have heard me get up on a soapbox. I'll save you guys in the stream from that. But shame and disgust and other feelings like that aren't, in my opinion, they're not necessarily feelings, they're constructs, but that's for another day. But again, the main point of this slide, the main fact here is that feelings are felt in our body. So if you're not sure what you're feeling, try paying attention and getting in touch with your body. Or maybe look at how you're sitting or standing or your posture even. That might give away cues into what's going on inside of you emotionally. So feelings, when felt and acknowledged and properly processed, on average will only last about 20 seconds. However, people will spend lifetimes suppressing emotions, trying to avoid something they feel like they cannot handle or other people cannot handle. But when we allow ourselves to really feel a feeling that maybe was too dangerous or felt too risky to feel back when, like from a former trauma, for example, or something like that, when we allow ourselves to really connect to that feeling in a way that we are, acknowledging it, where it's not so intense, it's like this, it's not like overwhelming or flooding type of effect. When we're properly feeling our feelings, they generally last around 20 seconds, and then they go. And so, the bumper sticker for that is what is suppressed persists. Here we have Freud telling us some solid advice. What we suppress will persist. So lastly, again, I said this earlier, feelings as data, or data, I don't know how you say that word. Feelings tell us about what's going on, what action is best to take to meet our needs, and they provide us the big picture, or that like right brain, if you will, forest kind of thing, understanding of a situation. I like to use this from my dad, his analogy of feelings are kind of like the indicator lights, or sometimes out in where our family's from in Eastern Kentucky, the dummy lights. They're in the car. Those are the these oil lights or whatever, the oil lamp lights in a car. And they're sometimes called dummy lights because, well, anybody, doesn't matter how smart you are, you kind of know the oil light's on, you need more oil, your oil's lower, time to change it. And that's how feelings are supposed to work. However, a lot of us aren't, we're not born with a manual. It's not like we know, like, anger is telling us this specific thing or sadness is telling us that. We learn from our families or we learn from our society, and oftentimes things are just gotten plain wrong, or a lot of times feelings are just made not okay. And a lot of people, guys more than women, I would say, to generalize on like gender wise, but I think guys are more guilty of, they do the equivalent with this sort of concept here of the light starts flashing, and what do? They pull the car over and pop the hood, and they say, okay, the oil light's flashing, so let me dig around in that car. They find the wire going to the light, cut that wire, oil light's off, drop the hood, and keep on driving. Well, the light's off, but does that solve the problem? No, right? It's been something that it's been suppressed or ignored. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you if you don't address your feelings. And I find that to be very true working with my clients here in counseling. Okay, so we're going to go into what I think is the crux of this presentation, the emotion wheel. So the emotion wheel I like to kind of consider the dashboard. It's this amazing tool that I think we can all apply, and I'll give you the basics of it, but what I encourage you at home to do is to look at the wheel and kind of, question what I have to say. I don't want to be the ultimate authority on feelings. I'm just sort of sharing what I do know. But look at this wheel here, see if it makes sense to you, see if you have other feelings that you might put on there or other interpretations of what they mean. But I like to kind of start with this because it's sort of like this nice Rosetta Stone. It's this nice way to translate what is going on emotionally from that, right brain, kind of like, what am I feeling, to that left brain, what does this mean about what's going on? And so we're going to start with the emotion wheel. Before I do that, I want to check. Okay, yeah, I don't think people are asking questions or anything like that on the stream. You're welcome to ask questions. I don't plan to, if we have time, I'll answer things. Okay, cool. So, the emotion wheel. So, we have 4 primary emotions. Happy, scared, mad, and sad. So, we're going to start with everyone's favorite emotion, happy. And so, what is happy telling us? Well, a goal is being achieved. If you think about times in which you were happy, it's probably because you got something you wanted. Whether it be a tangible item, like a kid on Christmas morning. I know that's the time when I think of being really happy, hoping I'd get, whatever toy I wanted that year, and then finding out I actually got it. And that joy, that excitement, that happiness I felt, of getting what I wanted. My body, my brain was telling me, hey, you're getting what you want, dude. But other things can make us happy. I think a lot of us will be very happy when we can be out in public again, and we can hug our friends, and we can be close to each other and get back to our normal routine. And that's what we want. That's part of what, this thing that we kind of just accepted and didn't really look at, or took for granted, I guess you could say. So happy, again, is telling us goals being achieved, and there's been some studies on this. In the world of positive psychology, they have found that people who keep a to-do list, for example, so you're like, okay, I don't know, get up in the morning, get dressed, right? Make breakfast for the kids, attend Eric's stream here, and so on, as they make this list of things to do. And if you imagine, if you've ever done this before, surely you have at some point in your life made a to-do list, and you strike them out. It's that, it feels good, right? It feels really good to just, I got one done, especially when you get to that last one on your to-do list, and you're like, I did everything I was set out to do today. I achieved all my goals. It's a nice, relaxing, happy feeling. And so people that do that in this study have been found to just have a general greater sense, on a regular basis, have a general sense of happiness, is what they talk about, a general just sense of well-being. Other examples of that are gratitude journals. Usually we see those kind of pop up on Facebook and on social media in the around Thanksgiving, but it's highly encouraged, especially for folks in recovery. I think there's a lot of folks in AA and that kind of thing. They're often encouraged, and I think for good reason, to keep a gratitude journal as they're going through one of the toughest times in their lives of giving up a addiction or substance of some sort. It's kind of hard to look at things positively or look at things at what's right and only focus on what hurts. And so with happiness, Again, if we just take a moment and reflect on what is going well or what we are glad that we have or grateful we have, we increase our sense of well-being or happiness. One other thought on happiness, and this is kind of my little spin on it. And if you really sit down, like right now, as you're listening to me talk, your brain, your mind is flooded at all times, all day, right now even, with this message of goals being achieved. Let's think about that. Like every time you take a breath, for example, there's a signal from my lungs, goes up my neck into my brainstem saying, hey, another goal achieved. Every time my heart beats at an unconscious level, same thing. Autonomic nervous system, I can pronounce that. There's proprioception. There's this general sense that, I'm sitting safely, securely in this chair right now. I'm not falling back in space. And that's another signal of, hey, a goal is being achieved. And if we really look at this, if we come and look at what's happening in the moment with our five senses, 99% of the time, what's happening is okay. There's nothing to do, or our goals are being achieved. We're okay. We have every reason to be happy and content, especially in our lives. In 2020, I know it's hard right now with the pandemic, but in modern times, we have all of our needs generally met for us. But what happens? So, why aren't we just happy all the time? Well, we have these pesky things called frontal lobes up here in our brain that take us to times where goals are not being achieved. And we are like living out scenarios or situations in which goals are destroyed or in harm's way or what have you. And we essentially pull ourselves out of the present and into situations and pull ourselves in situations where we are not getting what we want, in essence making ourselves not happy. We make ourselves unhappy. But I think it's a powerful concept here that I'm talking about, in that if we can take a moment and just be mindful about what's happening right here, right now in front of me, most of our goals are being achieved. But we all struggle with this at times. But it's I think this is why mindfulness is so powerful and important right now and popular, because I think mindfulness does a wonderful job of pulling us to what's happening in terms of our neurological or nervous system data about goals being achieved. So let's move on to the next feeling. We're talking about happy. So I remember growing up, and occasionally I'd hear from my mother, Eric, I am so not happy with you. Okay, and so my mom is usually like when I was like maybe late from curfew, or I don't know, didn't do something so great at school or whatever, talk back or something like that. I only did that one or two times, I guess. But she would say, I'm so not happy at you. What emotion is she feeling in that situation? Well, obviously she's not happy. In this situation that I experienced, she was angry. Now, I don't know if my mom knew at the time, but it was very intuitive of her, in that happy and anger are actually a spectrum emotion. So on one end we have happy telling us we're getting what we want. On the other end we have mad or anger telling us the goal's being blocked or an injustice of some sort is occurring. And so again, it's just we're not getting what we want. That's simple. That's what anger tells us. Anger, I think, out of all the emotions, has had it the worst historically. I think a lot of us are told, anger is this destructive, no good, dangerous emotion. And because of that, we believe it, or we've experienced that in some way. We end up becoming that way with anger. But in reality, anger itself is not destructive. It doesn't have to be. In fact, it can be very powerful. It's there to tell you, hey, dude, you're not getting what you want. A goal's being blocked. What do you need to do to move this direction? I believe animals also experience emotions, perhaps differently than we do, or in less, or in different ways, obviously. But I think we've all seen, anyone that's had pets has probably seen their animal get frustrated or angry about something, and they've obviously seen them get happy about something. But if you've observed an animal, like let's imagine like a rat in a maze, for example, it hits it's trying to get to the other end of the maze and get its cheese or peanut butter or whatever, and it hits a dead corner. Now that's frustrating because it's not where it thought it was going to take it. But does the rat go inward with that anger, or does it go say I'm a horrible rat, I'm an awful rat, or start banging its head against the wall or becoming destructive? No, it's like, oh, bummer. Okay, dead end. Let me try something else, and keeps on going. And ideally, that's how we'd use anger. It's like, okay, I'm not getting what I want. This isn't working for me. I need to do something else, and then move on with that. So when we're angry, we need to ask ourselves, I think, the first question of, what is it I want right now that I'm not getting? What would really, bring me joy or happiness, or what is it I'm trying to get either from this other person or in the situation right now? What is it I want that I can't have right now, or I'm not able to get right now? And then 2, what can I say or do to get that? And then 3, take action on that, if it's appropriate, of course. So a lot of times, again, if you're arguing with like a significant other, you might want them to understand you or feel like they care about you or have their respect or something like that. And if you're getting angry because you're not getting it, when you ask yourself, like, are you doing what you need to be doing to achieve that goal that's blocked of that received respect or understanding? Or are you doing things to further prove to yourself that anger is this destructive, no good emotion? Again, there are no bad emotions. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I'll clarify in the next video or whatever. But again, but if you think about a situation where you're with your significant other and, you're mad and you're like, hey, I'm really just feeling like you're not hearing me right now. Let me try a different way of explaining it. That's a lot more productive. So again, anger doesn't have to be this passive, destructive emotion. I guess my last few thoughts on anger, I think, again, out of all the emotions, it had the worst rap, and a lot of times we don't even call anger anger. We euthanize it into other terms like upset or bothered or hurt or that kind of thing, when what we're really feeling is angry. And so, I think we oftentimes take away the power of anger in that we don't even call it what it is. A lot of us don't. But when we can recognize it for what it is and act on it, it again becomes this mechanism to move towards achieving what we're wanting. I think the best example of someone I've ever seen showing anger in a public way that was just the best way to use it was Martin Luther King Jr. in the I Have a Dream speech. Most of us are familiar with that. We've seen it a few times, hopefully. If you listen to that speech, Martin Luther King Jr. is angry. He's literally talking about a goal blocked. But we don't necessarily interpret that when we watch it as anger, where he's passionate or something else. Passionate, I think, is probably what we go with. And why is that? Well, he's not talking about get destructive with this anger, this goal blocked. He's talking about let's resolve this injustice, this goal blocked in a peaceful manner. And that went on to become one of the most powerful speeches ever made that created amazing movements and all kinds of stuff. And so, I think, like, when you want to look at how to use anger, look at Martin Luther King Jr. and that I Have a Dream speech. I think that's a great example of someone using anger. So I know I'm talking a lot about anger, but also, I'm trying to look out for anger here. I feel like anger needs someone to have its back here in the world, and I got your back, anger. You're not a bad feeling. You're here to tell us how to get what we want. Oh, well, you saw it, but moving on. Let's look at scared. So what is scared telling us? Scared is telling us there's a threat of some sort on the horizon of a loss or harm coming to us. So scared or fear, I'll use those interchangeably, are what are called an anticipatory emotion. It's there to help you anticipate what's gonna happen, could happen, might happen, that hasn't happened just yet. And so it's, like if that's that saber-tooth tiger, we see a saber-tooth tiger across the field, and we're back in hunter-gatherer times, obviously, and that tiger, again, it might harm us, it might chase away what we're hunting or whatever. It's potentially gonna cause us to lose something? Has it done anything yet? Not necessarily. So fear is interesting in that, again, it's there to help you get ready. But where people get into trouble with fear is when we try to go way too out into the future with our thinking, or way too broadly. We try to think of all the different possible things that have a possibility of happening, but are not very probable of happening. Is usually what I see. And so, and even so, I like to compare this to trying to predict the weather. We've been predicting the weather for a very long time, and we've had just exponential explosions in technology and science since we've ever started tracking the weather, and we still can't get past like maybe a week at best at predicting what the weather's going to be. It's what's going on. That is a simulation that we're running on a computer with trying to predict the weather. And same thing with fear. Like, we're running a simulation in our brain, just like a computer would, to try to predict what's going to happen. And so, we aren't able to rely too well on our ability to predict what's going to happen way out in the future, because there's so many variables. Just like we can't, rely on ourselves to predict everything that's going to happen in one day even. So where am I going with this? Well, I think the key with fear is not to ignore it or avoid it or look at it as an emotion that's not helpful. In fact, it's very helpful. Without fear, we might make all kinds of dangerous, take dangerous actions or make mistakes and that kind of stuff. But with fear, it's important to reel it into, okay, what's the next thing that's gonna happen or could happen that I need to prepare for? And what is something that I can do, what's the most likely thing to happen? So what's the next thing that's going to happen and the most likely thing to happen today or this week or what have you? And then put your energy into preparing for that. It doesn't make sense to prepare for something that you have no ability or power to do anything over right now. But it does make sense to look at fear as to, okay, what's the next thing in line here? I hope that makes sense. Again, I'll check in with my you're watching. Cool. Okay, so that's scared. So just like happy and mad are on a spectrum, they're telling us, one end happy saying you're getting what you want, mad saying you're not. Just fear is about, or scared is about the future, about what could happen. Sad, in this case, is about the past. So it's also a spectrum of emotion, so it's about the past. Sadness is telling us about the losses or harms that we are realizing. And so again, that could be the things that we literally lost, the things that we should have had that we never got, and so on, at different layers. And I think the key with sadness, just like it is with all the feelings, but I think with sadness we tend to suppress it quite a bit, is to let ourselves connect to it and feel it, to let ourselves feel our feelings of loss. So that way, because it's really truly, sadness is just our mind or our brain getting used to life without something. And so if it's like a breakup, for example, you're getting used to life without that person around, and then you might go through a second round of grief with that breakup where you're grieving what you should have had or could have had or what you were supposed to have there that you have now lost. So again, sadness is just that being processed and brought into the equation of your mind. And with the key again with it is to just let yourself feel it. So here we have our four major or primary emotions. And so with this we can start building and understanding more complex feelings. This is just like the color wheel when you were a kid, and maybe even now you still play with the color wheel, I don't know. Just like on the color wheel, we have primary colors and secondary colors. You mix those primary colors together, you got like, red and yellow, and you get orange. Well, we can take these primary emotions here and combine them to get a more complex or a secondary type of emotion. So for example, let's see. Let's take happy and scared. If you are like me and enjoy a roller coaster, well, to describe the experience of riding on a roller coaster as something that makes me happy, is not 100% accurate, because a good roller coaster is one that scares the snot out of me. And so to say that it's that that feeling that I have on a roller coaster is fearful, well, that doesn't make sense either, because I'm laughing and getting back in line and paying good money to feel scared. The goal, in other words, is to feel threatened. And so, as you're thinking about what does that make, or what emotion is that, well, it's excited or thrilling. I'll take thrilling too. But excitement or thrilling is that emotion of us, the goal here is to face a potential threat. Other examples of things that are exciting, a long time ago, before I was married, like going on a first date, for example. I remember, like that, getting prepped for that date, and okay, is it, is she gonna show up? Am I gonna make a fool of myself? But there's this sort of like, I'm in this situation where there's something where, something I might totally blow it, but I'm glad I'm in the situation where I have an opportunity to potentially blow it, and so it's exciting. I'm sure you guys can think of other examples of things that are exciting, but it's the good kind of fear. It's the fear we want, in other words. Moving on, let's say we don't want to feel fear. Let's say the goal isn't to feel threatened anymore. We're tired, or and then from this wheel here, we're angry that we're feeling threatened. What does that make? Well, when we combine these two, we end up with anxious. Go back one. Anxiety or panic is a combination of anger and fear. And so a lot of people, when I first explain this, they are like, especially folks that are coming in for anxiety, like, well, what do you mean there's anger and anxiety? I am just totally connected to the fear side. Well, that is often the case. But if we really start digging at it, when you look at when you're feeling anxious, there's this sense of this energy in it that's like, okay, I don't like what's happening right now even, and I don't like what's gonna happen. And if you stay just focused or stuck on the threat of loss, the scared side of anxiety, and you don't bring yourself into the empowering anger that's there, and use that anger to move in towards achieving a goal that's been blocked, you're going to stay stuck in anxiety. Again, I think a key to getting out of anxiety is letting yourself feel anger in a productive way. I've once heard a bumper sticker that kind of said, this is not the case for every, and I'm sure some of you out there are like, well, that's not me, and so on. But I think we're talking in generalities here. But I think there's a bumper sticker that kind of described it well. The best treatment for anxiety is action. Well, how do you get into action? Well, you act with that anger, that goal-blocked kind of emotion, and you put it into gear or action, obviously, and move yourself into achieving a goal. And so anxiety. So an example of anxiety to help maybe bring that home for some of you. I like to work by example. So I get this way when it comes to taking tests. I hate taking tests. There's a part of me that's angry. There's a goal blocked. It's like it's an injustice, truly an injustice. There's other ways of showing I know something than a bubble test or whatever, an online test kind of thing, that, especially if it's for something important. And if I fail that test, here I'm in a situation I don't want to be in, that's not right. And if I fail that test, well, there's something at stake here that I could potentially lose. And so I'm both, when I'm thinking about a test, I am both angry and scared, or in other words, I have anxiety, or I get test anxiety, which is a common thing. So hope that makes sense. Again, leave comments or let me know if you need more explanation. I'm happy to come back in future streams to explain some of this stuff. But let's move on. So now we're going to look at this combination of sad and mad. So in essence, I don't like where I am right now. I'm stuck in injustice or a goal being blocked, and I'm really looking at all the times in which I've lost something, or I'm stuck on what I don't have. That's not going right and hasn't gone right. This one is depression or depressed. I think one way to look at depression that we're, especially with this model here, is one of the few things, and I used Freud earlier, but I think, he was off on a lot of stuff. I know Freud gets a lot of flack in the psychology community nowadays, but he had a few really good, interesting and good stuff. I think one of them was he defined depression as anger turned inward. And so what he noted was that a person that's got depression starts off angry externally at the outside world, at things that they have no control over. Like some of us are probably angry right now over the COVID-19 pandemic and having to be shelter at home, and taking this external anger we have and we can't do anything with it because it doesn't make a dang difference. What do? We do what's natural or part of human nature is we take that anger and we turn it in on ourselves as a way of trying to gain a sense of control over a situation in which we often don't have any power over. And so with a depressed person, we have two parts. We have a part of us that's really angry and negative and just like the destructive anger, and we have a part of us that's feeling beaten up by that other side, that's sad. And so again, with depression, when someone comes in, they're trying to work on that. Key to it is to harness the anger, that angry side of depression, in a way that's productive to move a person into feeling like into achieving goals. I think a lot of times with depression, it's hard, but it's a matter of throwing yourself out into doing something, doing what you can, so that you can start to rack up that kind of a sense of the goals being achieved, which can be very difficult for some folks, but that's what therapy's for, to figure out how to get there and how to get in that point. Okay, so we're looking good on time, so we're going to go on to the last combination here. If some of you working ahead might be thinking, okay, well, what on earth is happy and sad do? Like I've heard people say that's bipolar or that's crazy or something like that. So this is the tricky one. If you get this one, you get bonus points from me from afar or a high five online, because this is probably the least clinically sounding of all the emotions I've described so far. But let me set you up with an example here. So in this situation where we're feeling both happy and sad, we're getting what we want, but it comes with a loss. So an example that might be for folks that loved high school, that was just absolutely loved it. They're involved and they had friends and that kind of stuff. At your high school graduation, here you are achieving that goal. You were there for 4 years working your butt off to get that diploma, that piece of paper. And with that comes this realization that this is the last time you're going to be around your coaches, your friends, your teachers, the other parents that you got to know over the last 4 years and make connections with, that you're going to be moving on. And so there's a loss that's realized with this goal that's being achieved. I think the other time we can experience this is looking backwards at the losses or the things that are no longer occurring that were good times. So with that first example is nostalgia, it's bittersweet. The high school graduation example, it's a bittersweet feeling. With my latter example there, nostalgic, I think, describes this combination of happy and sad. So here we have the emotion wheel pretty much complete. Now, here's what's cool about this thing. Like I was saying earlier, we can do all kinds of stuff at this point with this wheel to maybe begin to decrypt some of our feelings or gain insights into what's going on with us. For example, I would encourage you at home that are maybe taking notes or that are looking at this and really finding this helpful. You might draw this out and start with what we've got here, and you might consider things like, okay, well, like I said earlier, we can feel feelings at different levels of intensity. So we have you might be happy at a 1, which might be this kind of feeling, all right, or we might be happy at a euphoric 10. And so again, it's all happy, but it's just different intensities. Or we might be angry at and that's kind of annoying or annoyed kind of feeling, or it might go all the way up to 10 and be this blood rage, that you feel. Again, it all falls into this level of the same emotion with the same data, but different intensities. You might play around also with looking at, like one kind of thing I like to consider is, what do you think's in the middle? Here I am in a situation where there's, okay, I'm not really achieving any goals. No goals are blocked. I'm not really looking at the past. I'm not really looking at the future. I'm right here in the present with just sort of, I think the emotion to cut to it is contentment or peace. So again, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's what you guys do with this from here kind of is up to you to help, again, break things down. And so at the next talk I have with this, if I pick up on this, we will show how we can utilize this emotion wheel to break down our feelings, understand them better, to process intense feelings, that kind of stuff. I'll give you guys some tools here that are based in cognitive behavior therapy. But we're going to use this as our Rosetta Stone, if you will. Like I said earlier, we're going to use this as a big key. So there you have it, the emotion wheel. So thank you guys for listening. I hope this made sense and brought some, at the very least, interesting to you. I really enjoy doing these and talking, so if you guys have requests for other sorts of psychoeducational pieces, or have other ideas of things that Avenues Unlimited could be doing for like online, to have an online presence with you and help interact with folks that are maybe stuck at home right now, please let us know. I really enjoy this. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. I'm Eric, BRICJR, at avenuesunlimited.com. Or you can visit our website, avenuesunlimited.com, for more information about what we do and the therapists that we work with. One other thing that maybe I'll let you guys know about is one thing we're offering right now for folks stuck at home is Lauren Grammer, one of our other therapists here. She is going to be doing a Zoom art class based on mindfulness and other strategies. But we are going to be sending out these cool little boxes with like clay and paint and all kinds of stuff. And once a week, I think it's aged 8 to 13 is what we're looking at here for young adults or kids. But it'll be once a week they meet, and she'll be meeting with them in a group to help them, get some interaction and some tools to help get through some of these difficult times. So that's all I have for now, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoyed this. I'll see you next time.